I want to first start with the disclaimer. I am in-house, so I'm on the other side of Catherine, so I kind of see things from a very different perspective. There's a lot of databases that are out there that are available to academics, to industry, that I probably am not familiar with. Like, I've never heard of Patent Lens, so I've never used it. So I'm just going to introduce a few of the, mostly the Patent Office databases and a few of the other, since they're free, and a few of the other databases that are available, like Google Patent, and kind of try to go through them. But by no means am I going to be able to be exhaustive about what's out there, and maybe I don't know what is the best, but I only know what I use, and that's all I can tell you about at this stage. Also, there's going to be a little bit of repetition here. I have some slides that are almost identical to Catherine's. But that's just because I'm going to be talking about searching patents. So I have to tell you, or at least I thought I had to tell you, what is in a patent and what you're searching, the different parts that you're searching, and how you're going to perform your search based upon what patents contain. So we already know that what a patent is. It covers you file a patent application to protect your invention. It's an exclusive right that is granted by the government of a country. It's country specific, and it's time limited. But I do think the two important criteria for patentability that you need to consider it's kind of why you're doing patent searches, is whether or not your invention is new and whether it's non-obvious. So as Catherine has mentioned, new means it has not been disclosed to the public. So doing patent searches, one of the reasons to do it is to figure out, has it been disclosed in the patent literature? And as Catherine has mentioned, is like, has it been disclosed before you filed your patent application, or you've also got that grace period for your disclosures only in Canada, the United States, and a few other countries. And I'll skip over inventiveness since we've already talked about it, but again, of course, you're going to do your patent search and look at the totality of the prior art that you're going to be looking at to find out whether or not, if you put everything together, might your invention be considered obvious. So just we've already talked about what can be a disclosure. Obviously, what we're going to be looking at in patent searches are disclosures in patent applications, but basically any disclosure is any communication that is not made in confidence that allows someone to reproduce your invention. So it has to be an enabling disclosure, and I think that speaks a little bit to the fraud question, that if there is a disclosure out there, if you can prove that it's not enabling, there wasn't any way to actually prove that that was right at the time that that disclosure was made, you may be able to overcome that. However, if it could be considered an enabling disclosure, then yeah, unfortunately, that's going to be cited against you. If it has been made by an employee of a company and they weren't allowed to do that, the company can actually sue you, and you could go to jail, and I actually know one example of that. So again, to get a patent, you have to be the first person to actually come up with this idea, and at least as far as public knowledge is considered. And in most countries, you have to be the first person to file the patent application at the patent office. And of course, meet all the other patentability requirements that Catherine's already mentioned. So why bother searching patents? Well, obviously, the first one is to assess the novelty and inventiveness of your invention. But there's other reason to actually look into the patent literature, not just to assess patentability. You could also want to get a general idea, first of all, of how patent applications in this field are written, what goes into them, what are the different components, what have other people had to put into a patent application to prove that you have actually reduced to practice your invention, you have enough support for your utility. So what have other people done? You don't have to necessarily reinvent the wheel and start all over, but you do have to have a new invention. A new invention first and foremost, but you can actually see what other people have put in their patent applications. So it's kind of helping with the drafting process. But it also, because patents are covering innovations, what's going on at the forefront of industry in your area, it actually is a good way to learn more about your field. What are your competitors up to? What are they patenting? What's the market in this particular area like, at least from the patent point of view? The other important reason is to think about, and this one thing I don't think Catherine mentioned, is freedom to operate. So you have to look at other people's patents to see whether or not they're going to block you from commercializing your invention because they already have a patent on it. And I'll speak a little bit more about that later. Well, I guess on this slide, what is freedom to operate? Well, basically, would something that you are doing, whether it's testing or selling or making or using your product, would it infringe a valid intellectual property right that somebody else has? In considering your whether or not you'd be infringing somebody else's patent, you have to consider every aspect of your production line, which means basically if you using starting materials to make a final product, you have to be concerned about whether or not those starting materials are patented as well. If you are using a specific isolation technique, a specific HPLC or a specific PCR or CRISPR or something like that, then you have to be sure that you are not infringing somebody else's patent when you use those tools. And of course, whether or not you're infringing somebody's patent, it is country specific, so you have to be concerned about whether or not where you are practicing your invention, where you are going to sell your product, whether or not they actually have a patent in that country for what you are doing. And I think I do mention later on too, there are certain exceptions to patent infringement, and that's country specific as well, but there are certainly certain exceptions for experimental use, and there are certain exceptions for gaining information for regulatory approval. As Catherine has mentioned, when you're doing patent searching, it is important to remember that there is that 18-month window where you're not going to know whether there is a patent out there because somebody has filed it, but it is not yet published, so this could come up later on, and there's really nothing you can do about it. And also when you're considering patentability of your invention, you not only have to consider the patent prior art, you also have to consider the non-patent art. And that's not something I'm dealing with today, but it is certainly something that needs to be considered. You've already seen this slide from Catherine. It's just the common filing strategy that includes the Patent Cooperation Treaty. I just put it up there because when you are doing patent searches, you're going to come up with perhaps, you're going to see patent documents that's a PCT application, Patent Cooperation Treaty application, the same application in the US or in China or in India or whatever. So it's just because they're all part of the same family, but they should all have a very similar disclosure part, a similar specification part. The thing that might be different from those different documents is the scope of the claims. But just to give you an idea of when you are searching these patent databases, you may not just come up with one hit because there'll be several family members that they're called of patents in one particular filing that may come up in your search. And this whole group of patents is called the family. So quickly I can go through this again because Catherine's already covered the different parts of a patent document. And again, I'm covering this because when you are doing your patent searches in the databases, you can selectively choose which parts you're going to search. Because obviously, if you are limiting your search to the claims or the abstract or the title, you're going to get fewer hits than if you do a full text patent search of the entire patent application. So you can restrict your searches in that way. So just to give you an idea of what's on a cover page, if your database lets you search a cover page, here's a typical cover page of a US patent. It's actually one that's hotly contested now in the US. It's the broad patent for the CRISPR technology. As you can see, up in the corner, you've got the US patent number and its issue date. There's actually a serial number, which is down a little bit further on the left. All of the inventor names, you've got the title, you've got the related applications, and you've got the international and there's the international classifications and there's the CPC classifications. And I'll get into classification searches a little bit as well, so you can search by those classifications. There's the abstract. So those are all the things that are on a title page. So if you're searching, putting in search terms into your database. Those are the types of things that you can search on a title page. I originally had other title pages, but I took them out because basically most countries will have the same type of information on the title page. One thing to be, if you're looking for a specific patent document by a patent number, you've got the application number or the serial number, you've got the publication number, and you've got the patent number. And they could all be 3 different numbers depending on the country. Like the United States, actually there's a different number for the serial number, the publication number, and for the patent number. In Canada, those 3 numbers are the same. So each country will sort of have different practices in that regard. The classification codes, each patent will come with where it's been classified according to the international classifications, or to the US has their own as well. The most relevant one will generally be bolded on the front page. Note that on the front page, the prior art that was cited during the application is actually on some of those cover pages. So searching information on the cover page can actually just give you hits that are from the actual prior art citations. So those could be maybe not so relevant as what you're looking for. So again, the various different parts of the specification or the description that can be searched. And usually if you're searching the description, it's all or none, and it's a full text type search. But those are the different parts that can be searched. And again, as Catherine's mentioned, the claims are really kind of the most important part of a patent or a patent application. They particularly point out and distinctly claim what you want, what you'd regard as your invention. The claims are particularly important for freedom to operate searches, because those are the things you want to look at to see whether or not you actually would be infringing that particular patent if you fall within the scope of the wording of the claims. So from our earlier patent, I've just pulled up another example of a claim. You can see this is a particular, this is a method claim for this particular patent. So it's a method of altering the expression of at least one gene. That's how this particular patent worded and covered that invention. So from an infringement point of view, if you were performing that method that meets all the limitations of that claim, you would be infringing that patent. This was just one example from the same family of a European patent. And as you can see, it's actually it's actually a vector claim, I believe. Anyway, it's more of a product type claim rather than a method type claim. So claims to the invention can be drafted in different ways and in different forms. But since this is a very important patent from very important technology, you can rest assured that there are actually 222 family members in this particular patent, and I'll show you how I found that out. So just to note, when you're searching claims, claims can be of different scope in different countries. Even for a smaller patent, you will have slight differences in examination and may come up with claims of different scope in different countries. And that's definitely important for freedom to operate. So here I'm just moving on to some examples of the different patent databases that you can use. These are all free and that are available on the web. And there's the URLs for them. So the ones that I decided to point out are WIPO, that's the World Intellectual Property Organization. They have a database called Patent Scope, which I find very useful, and I use it actually quite a bit. There's also the EPO, ESPACENET, which I think of the top two I find very, very, very useful. The USPTO obviously is useful as well. It's specifically for the US, whereas WIPO and EPO, you can actually search other countries' patents using those databases. And I threw in CIPO. If you're ever interested in looking at information on Canadian patents, that is there. And they actually do have file histories on there now, so that's becoming a bit more useful. So I'm just going to give you some screenshots. I know we were talking about doing some hands-on stuff, but I don't think we have time to go, but I will be around for a while, that if you do have any questions, if you do want to go onto one of these sites, I can show you some examples and give you some tips that at least I've learned through my experience on how to navigate some of these databases. This is just a screenshot of when you get into the Patent Scope database, what you're going to see. And you see there's a pull-down menu first that you can search various terms. In that pull-down menu, it says the front page, so that's your cover page search, but you can also pull down that menu and search the claims or the abstracts, or you can look for an applicant, or you can look for an application number in that particular slot. Up on the upper left, there is another pull-down menu for various searches, and you've got other options which I find very useful. So the simple search is what came up first. And then you can do an advanced search where you can do more in that particular screen. One of the things I do find useful is the field combinations search. And that's on this page. And you can see they're all pull-down menus, so you can search the different parts of the patent application, put different terms in. If you want to narrow it down by inventor name or company name, you want to just search the title, you want to just search the abstract. You can do that, and then you can AND them all together, or you can OR them together, or whatever you want to do. What I find useful here is when you start putting terms in, down at the bottom it actually does tell you how many hits you're going to get. So like it'll start with, like, if you just put a simple term like gene, obviously you're going to get 1 million hits. But if you start narrowing it down, it'll tell you, okay, it's going to go down to 10,000 hits, it's going to go down. And then when you finally get down to maybe 100 or 50 or whatever you want to look at, because obviously you don't want to sit and look at 1,000 hits, then you can do that search. So it kind of helps with the iterative process to see how these terms are helping you narrow your search to what you're looking for. ESPACENET is another very useful database. And I use it a lot, not for necessarily, prior art searching, but more for looking for information on patent status, or looking for that specific patent that you think might be out there, or some company may have filed in this area. When you do the smart search here, and if you've got the publication number, you've got the serial number, or you've got the patent number, you can just enter that there and look it up. You have to put in the country code, like if it's US, and then the 7 numbers to go in there. If it was a Canadian number you put CA and then the number, or if it's a PCT, you put WO and then the number. That is useful for finding patent documents. I plugged in that US patent number, and this is the bibliographic data that comes up for it. And one thing that's useful, I find, with ESPACENET is that if you look over on the left-hand side, down at the sort of bottom of that first list, it says the INPADOC patent family. So if you want to know other members, where has this patent been filed around the world? Do I have to worry about it in China? Do I have to worry about it in the United States? Most likely you do. But do I have to worry about it in Canada? Did they actually file in Canada? So this is one place that you can actually find that out. And this is just, so I did that search, and as you can see, there are 222 members. So they filed this patent and related patent applications, anything that's sort of connected by priority dates. There's 222 of them, and they're all listed here. And you can actually click on each one of them, and they'll give you information about the status. You can get legal status over there. And then I also want to point out that this gives you access to, if you look in the first one, which will be what I searched on the US, the global dossier. You can access the global dossier from here. And what is the global dossier? It's actually it's a set of business services that are being developed by the IP5, the big IP5, which is the USPTO, the EPO, the Japanese Patent Office, the South Korean Patent Office, and the Chinese Patent Office, where they are trying to modernize the global system. So they're trying to coordinate searching and examination and prior art citations amongst those 5 databases. Anyway, but going to the global dossier, you can actually access the file history for each one of those patent applications by clicking on that dot, and it'll take you to the USPTO, or it'll take you to the EPO. Of course, on the eSpace, you can directly go into the EPO and find out what's going on in Europe for this patent application. So I use eSpace more for finding out what's going on during the prosecution of a patent application, where it stands in terms of status, what happened, Does it look like it's going to be allowed, or if it was allowed, what was cited, things like that. So not so much for patentability. But I'm sure you can use it, I just haven't used it for that purpose. USPTO, if you go to their site, this is my water. Sorry, excuse me. You can see there's a list of different things that you can search on the USPTO. You've got the full text patent or the full text patent application databases. You have to search them separately. You can access the global dossier from there. There's the patent application information. That's the Parr system, which you can get, again, status of a US patent application. So that's what you can get at the USPTO. And finally, I'm just going to touch on the Google patent. I find, like, if you are going to do, for me, if I'm going to use a free database, I don't necessarily have to, because we have a subscription to Total Patent, which is what we use for our patentability searches, but it is a free fee-for-service database. Google Patents is actually pretty darn good. And you can just put in your, like you would do a Google search, put in your terms, and there's different ways to narrow it down on the left over there, but that's a good resource as well. This is the fee-for-service ones, so I won't touch on them. So as I've already mentioned, there's kind of two types of search: patentability, freedom to operate, and then there's also the other one where you're just looking for patent information on status and whether or not it's been allowed or not. So unfortunately, I'm running out of time, so I'm going to have to skip through this. But I just finally, my last slide, one thing that you should think about when you're going through all of these database, every one of them comes with instructions and tips and explanations of how to use their database. So how to do the Boolean, whether there's left or right truncation, how to do all of that. That's all. I would definitely recommend you read up on how to use their databases, all their tips and tricks. Know what the database covers. Is it covering only one country? Is it covering several different countries? What years does it cover? Things like that. There are errors. It's all entered by humans, scanned in, but there are errors, so be careful of that. You can actually also use patent search companies, which are available out there. There's certainly lots of them, so I know that's a service that's available, and it's actually very popular right now. So you can pay somebody that does this for a living to actually do your patent searches for you. There's certainly a cost benefit, but the key would be, it can take a while to come up with the proper search terms. You got to go back and forth. You're going to get a lot of hits, but you just got to narrow it down and eventually figure out what the best search terms are to find what you're looking for, and be persistent and hopefully find what you're looking for. Sometimes it's a needle in a haystack. Okay?
Yeah, thank you very much.